My friends, throughout my life, I have learned that the greatest power a human being can possess is not wealth, not fame, and not authority. It is knowledge. It is the courage to keep learning when the world tells you to stop. Many believe that education ends with a diploma, but true learning begins when life tests you beyond the walls of a classroom. It is in the moments of struggle, failure, and uncertainty that the mind either sleeps or awakens. And I urge you, never let your mind sleep. There was a time when I sat behind prison walls, stripped of freedom and comfort, but my hunger to learn remained alive. I learned from the people around me, from books that carried the wisdom of generations, and from the silence that taught me patience and reflection. Even in darkness, knowledge became my light. It shaped my spirit, it strengthened my will, and it reminded me that a man who continues to learn can never truly be imprisoned. Every day, the world changes, technology advances, societies evolve, and new challenges arise. The question is not whether we can keep up, but whether we are willing to keep learning. The one who stops learning stops growing. The one who stops growing stops living. So I ask you, wherever you are, whatever your age or circumstance, do not close your mind. Learn from your failures, from your enemies, from the children who see the world with pure eyes. For wisdom does not belong to the educated alone. It belongs to those who seek it. Never stop learning, because the day you stop learning is the day you stop leading, and the day you stop leading is the day you stop changing the world. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. These words are not just a statement, they are a truth carved into the foundation of human progress. Knowledge has the power to transform an individual from a state of ignorance to a force of change. It can turn a life of limitation into a story of possibility. It can take a nation from darkness to light. Learning is not simply an act of gathering information. It is the continuous journey of awakening the mind and nurturing the soul. It is a light that never fades, a river that never stops flowing, and a seed that continues to grow with every experience, every question, and every discovery. Many believe that education ends with a diploma or a degree, but true learning begins the moment we step into the real world. The classroom is only the beginning of our journey. Life itself becomes the greatest teacher, testing our patience, our values, and our courage. Every challenge we face, every mistake we make, and every person we meet has something to teach us if we are humble enough to listen. Learning is not limited by age, background, or circumstance. The farmer learns from the seasons. The child learns from curiosity, and the leader learns from the people. To stop learning is to stop living, for growth only comes to those who keep their minds open and their hearts curious. When I was in prison, stripped of all the comforts of freedom, I discovered that the human spirit can still rise above confinement when it continues to learn. I read every book I could find. I listened to the stories of my fellow prisoners, and I learned from my own reflection in silence. In that small, cold cell, I realized that education is not something given to you by others. It is something you must claim for yourself. The mind, once awakened by knowledge, can never again be enslaved. Even in chains, a person who keeps learning is truly free. That is why I say that learning is the most powerful weapon, because it liberates the soul even when the body is bound. Knowledge is not only the tool of the scholar or the student, it is the lifeblood of humanity. It allows us to adapt, to understand, to grow, and to connect. The world we live in today changes faster than ever before. Technology advances, cultures evolve, and challenges emerge that demand new solutions. The ability to keep learning is what separates those who thrive from those who fade. Those who cling to old knowledge alone will be left behind, but those who keep learning, who stay curious and flexible, will continue to rise. A true learner does not fear change, he welcomes it, because he understands that every new day brings with it a new lesson. Every obstacle hides an opportunity to grow stronger. Every mistake is not a sign of failure, but a step toward wisdom. Learning is not about being perfect. It is about being willing to improve. The moment we believe we know everything is the moment we begin to decline. Wisdom begins with humility, with the courage to admit that we do not know it all, and that there is always something more to learn from others, from nature, from history, and even from our own failures. Leadership, too, is rooted in learning. A great leader is not one who commands from above, but one who learns from those he leads. Throughout my life, I have met people from every walk of life, from the uneducated worker to the highly trained scholar, and I have learned something from each of them. To lead a nation, one must first understand it. To understand, one must first listen. And to listen, one must be willing to learn. The most powerful leaders in history were not those who imposed their will, but those who continued to grow through knowledge and empathy. Learning also gives birth to compassion. When we learn about the struggles of others, we develop empathy. When we study the history of pain, we understand the importance of peace. When we explore the diversity of human thought, we grow in tolerance. Knowledge opens the mind, but wisdom opens the heart. Education is not just about reading books or passing exams. It is about learning to respect others, to seek justice, and to serve humanity. That is the true purpose of learning, to make us better people, and through us, to make the world a better place. Each of us carries a responsibility to keep learning, to keep growing, and to pass that light on to others. Parents must teach their children not only to study, but to question and to dream. Teachers must continue to learn so they can inspire. And leaders must never stop seeking understanding, for a nation's progress depends not on its wealth, but on the wisdom of its people. When one person learns, a family grows stronger. When a community learns, a nation moves forward. And when humanity learns, the world becomes brighter. My friends, The journey of learning never ends. It continues with every sunrise and every conversation. It grows with curiosity, with courage, and with compassion. So keep reading, keep questioning, keep observing. Be a student of life. Let your mind be restless and your heart be open. For in the end, it is not the years in our life that define us, but the lessons we learn along the way. Never stop learning, because the day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you stop leading, you stop changing, and you stop living. Keep learning, and you will keep shining the light that changes the world. When I think about the journey of life, I remember the moments when learning became my only companion, my only source of freedom, and my greatest strength. There was a time when walls of concrete and iron surrounded me, when I was stripped of my home, my family, and my nation's voice. I had no access to the outside world, no stage from which to speak, no freedom to act. Yet in that darkness, I discovered something far greater than freedom of movement. I discovered the freedom of the mind. Even in a cell that confined my body, my mind remained limitless because I never stopped learning. I learned that knowledge is not bound by place or privilege. You do not need the walls of a classroom or the comfort of a desk to learn. True learning comes from the desire within, a hunger to grow, to understand, to evolve. In prison, I read whatever books I could find, but my greatest lessons came not from pages alone. They came from the people around me. I learned from the men who shared my cell, from the guards who watched us, from the silence that filled the air at night. Every sound, every glance, every story became a lesson. Books taught me history and philosophy, but people taught me patience, humility, and endurance. From the young prisoners, I learned about courage in the face of fear. From the older ones, I learned about wisdom born of suffering. And from my own heart, I learned the value of reflection. When you are left alone with your thoughts, you begin to understand the depths of your own mind, your weaknesses, your strength, your dreams, and your truths. Even in those long years of isolation, I found that learning could liberate my spirit. The more I learned, the freer I became. My mind traveled beyond the bars, beyond the island, beyond the injustice that held me captive. Knowledge gave me hope that one day I would walk out of those gates not as a broken man, but as a wiser one. Hope that the lessons I learned in darkness could one day bring light to my people. There were moments when despair tried to silence my will, but I reminded myself that ignorance is the true prison of mankind. You can lock up a man's body, but you cannot imprison his mind if he refuses to stop learning. Every day, I told myself, learn something new about yourself, about others, about life. And in that pursuit, I found peace. I realized that to learn is to grow, and to grow is to move toward freedom. Through learning, I began to understand my oppressors as well. I read about their history, their fears, and their beliefs. I sought to understand what made them who they were. Because learning is not about building walls of pride. It is about building bridges of understanding. When you learn about others, you no longer see them as enemies. You see them as fellow human beings, each shaped by their own lessons and experiences. This understanding gave me strength, not anger. It taught me that wisdom, not hatred, is the path to victory. I also learned that failure is not the opposite of learning, it is a part of it. Every mistake, every setback carried within it a lesson I needed to face. I failed many times, but each failure pushed me to reflect, to grow, and to rise again. That is what learning truly means, not to collect knowledge, but to transform through experience. As the years passed, I watched the faces of young men who entered the prison with bitterness and hopelessness. I encouraged them to read, to study, to discuss, to question. Slowly, I saw their spirits rise. Their anger began to turn into purpose, their despair into determination. Learning gave them back their dignity. It gave them a reason to believe in tomorrow. That is the power of knowledge. It transforms pain into power, captivity into courage. When I finally walked out of prison, I was not the same man who entered. The years had taken much from me, but they had also given me the greatest gift, the wisdom born of learning. I had learned that freedom is not given, it is built through understanding. I had learned that leadership is not about commanding others, it is about continuously growing yourself. And most of all, I had learned that education is not a period of life, it is life itself. Learning shaped my soul, it sharpened my vision, and it deepened my compassion. It taught me that every person, no matter how poor or powerless, has the right to learn, because through learning, they can rise above any circumstance. The mind is the greatest instrument of change, and as long as it keeps learning, there is no force strong enough to defeat it. So, my friends, never underestimate the power of lifelong learning. Whether you sit in a classroom, walk in the streets, or sit in silence with your thoughts, you are always a student. The world is your teacher. Every experience, every encounter, every trial carries a lesson meant for you. Keep your mind open and your spirit humble, for the greatest wisdom comes not from knowing everything, but from the willingness to keep learning every day of your life. Remember this, you can be stripped of wealth, of status, of freedom, but if you continue to learn, you remain powerful beyond measure. The fire of knowledge cannot be extinguished by any darkness. It is your light, your strength, and your freedom. Never stop learning, because in the end, it is learning that keeps your soul alive and your spirit free. Many people believe that education ends when we walk out of the school gates for the last time, or when we receive a certificate with our name written on it. But my friends, true learning does not live within the boundaries of institutions or in the ink of a diploma. Real education is not a degree hanging on a wall. It is a lifelong journey of the heart and the mind. Learning continues in the quiet moments of reflection, in the lessons that pain and struggle teach us, in the compassion we discover for others, and in the wisdom we gain through living. Life itself is the greatest teacher we will ever know. There are lessons that no classroom can teach. The classroom can give you knowledge, but only life can give you understanding. It is one thing to learn about justice in a book, and another to fight for it in the real world. It is one thing to study the meaning of compassion, and another to practice it when your heart is tested by hardship. The lessons that shape our character, the lessons that define our strength, do not come with textbooks or exams. They come through experience, through endurance, through the willingness to face life with open eyes and an open heart. I have met men who could not read or write, yet they possessed a wisdom far greater than that of any scholar. They understood the language of struggle, the meaning of sacrifice, and the value of honesty. Their lives were their lessons, and their actions were their teachings. I have also met those with great academic success, yet they lacked empathy, humility, and understanding. Education is incomplete when it fills the mind but leaves the heart empty. True learning must touch both. It must teach the head to think and the heart to feel. When I was a young man, I believed that success would come from knowledge alone, but over time, I learned that wisdom is born from experience. When I entered prison, I was forced to learn in ways no book could ever prepare me for. I learned patience when freedom was taken away. I learned forgiveness when hatred seemed easier. I learned resilience when hope was fading. These were lessons written not on paper, but on the soul. Every hardship became a teacher. Every disappointment became a lesson, and every victory became a reminder that learning never ends. True learning is not about collecting information. It is about transformation. It is about growing from the person you were yesterday into someone wiser, kinder, and stronger today. Each mistake carries a message. Each failure offers an opportunity. The question is not whether life will teach you, it always will, but whether you are willing to learn. Those who learn from their experiences become unbreakable, for every wound turns into wisdom, and every scar becomes a symbol of growth. In this world, knowledge alone is not enough. Without compassion, knowledge can become dangerous. Without justice, intelligence loses its purpose. And without resilience, even the most brilliant minds crumble in adversity. To truly learn is to grow not just in intellect, but in humanity. It is to see others as part of your own journey. It is to use what you have learned to uplift, to heal, and to serve. The measure of your education is not how much you know, but how much good you bring into the world with that knowledge. Learning beyond school means listening to the lessons that life offers every day. The elderly teach us the value of patience and perspective. Children teach us purity, curiosity, and honesty. Strangers teach us understanding and tolerance. Even our enemies teach us discipline, strategy, and endurance. Life has a way of educating us through people, places, and moments we never expect. But we must remain humble enough to listen and brave enough to grow. The most powerful kind of learning happens when we look beyond ourselves. When we open our minds to the experiences of others, we begin to understand the world in its true form, not divided by color, language, or belief, but united by humanity. Each of us has a story, and within every story, there is a lesson. True learners do not judge, they observe, they do not condemn, they seek to understand, they do not boast of their knowledge, they use it to build bridges and bring peace. Life will test your values again and again. You will encounter moments that challenge what you believe. These moments are not meant to break you, they are meant to teach you. You may lose, but you will learn. You may fail, but you will grow. You may fall, but you will rise wiser than before. Every experience, whether painful or joyful, carries a gift. The wise never waste their suffering. They turn it into strength. So, my friends, do not measure your learning by what is written in books or proven by grades. Measure it by your ability to understand, to forgive, to adapt, and to love. Education without empathy is hollow. Intelligence without integrity is dangerous. Success without wisdom is empty. But when you combine knowledge with compassion, learning with humility, and growth with justice, then you have discovered the true meaning of education. The world does not need more degrees. It needs more understanding. It needs men and women who never stop learning, who continue to evolve, who use their knowledge to serve rather than to rule. It needs those who understand that the greatest school of all is life itself. So, wherever you are, whatever you do, continue to learn from failure, from others, from the smallest moments. Never believe that your education is complete, because as long as you breathe, life will continue to teach you. And as long as you keep learning, you will continue to grow into the person you were meant to become. A true leader is not born. A true leader is made through learning. Leadership is not a crown placed upon the head, but a light that grows from within. It is the wisdom that comes from listening, the strength that comes from understanding, and the humility that comes from knowing there is always more to learn. A leader who stops learning stops leading. The path of leadership is not a straight road of authority. It is a winding journey of discovery, reflection, and growth. When I think back to my own journey, I remember that I did not become a leader overnight. I did not wake up one day prepared to guide a nation. My understanding of leadership was shaped through years of struggle, through countless failures, through the lessons that came from pain and patience. In prison, I had time to reflect deeply on the meaning of leadership. I realized that to lead others, one must first learn to lead oneself. And to lead oneself, one must be willing to learn constantly. During those long years behind bars, I studied people more than anything else. I studied their fears, their hopes, their reactions, and their dreams. I learned that true leadership is not about commanding others, but about understanding them. It is about knowing their struggles, respecting their voices, and sharing their pain. Leadership without empathy is tyranny, and empathy cannot exist without learning. I learned that every man, friend, or enemy has something to teach. Even those who oppressed me taught me about patience, about the strength of silence, about the importance of forgiveness. Every encounter became a lesson. Many people think that power defines leadership, but I have learned that learning defines it more. Power can fade, titles can be taken away, but knowledge and wisdom endure. The most dangerous leader is one who believes he knows everything. The greatest leader is one who admits he does not. Leadership demands constant learning, learning from history to avoid its mistakes, learning from the people to understand their needs, and learning from oneself to recognize one's limitations. When I walked out of prison after 27 years, I was not the same man who entered. The world had changed, but because I had continued to learn, I was ready to face it. The years of reflection had prepared me to guide a nation, not with anger, but with understanding. I had learned that to rebuild a country divided by hatred, we needed not vengeance, but wisdom. And wisdom is born from learning to listen, to forgive, to compromise. A leader who stops learning becomes a danger to his people. He becomes blind to change, deaf to the truth, and resistant to growth. The world does not stand still. New generations rise with new ideas, new technologies, new challenges. A leader must keep learning to stay connected to the pulse of his people. Knowledge is not static. It is alive, evolving, transforming every day. Those who lead must grow with it, or they will be left behind by those they seek to guide. Learning also teaches humility. A wise leader understands that he does not have all the answers. He surrounds himself with people who know more than he does, who challenge him, who teach him. In my